Prime Minister Morrison said to unveil a $328 million plan tackling domestic abuse. The package, which marks the biggest ever financial contribution to fight domestic violence, will focus on prevention, identification, rescue and recovery. The scheme will involve educating school kids on how not to become perpetrators or victims of domestic violence.
Mr Morrison says Australia needs to counter the culture of disrespect towards women. 8 women are sent to hospital each day because of domestic violence abuse. Joining us now is the Minister for Families and Social Services, Paul Fletcher. Thanks for your time.
Good to be with you.
Minister, I remember when Malcolm Turnbull first took the role as Prime Minister, this is one of his biggest announcements, a big package on domestic violence. Has anything improved in the last 3 years?
Well, this is a significant announcement today, and indeed it takes cumulative spending in this area since 2013 by our Liberal National Government to $840 million. So this $328 million is for the 4th Action Plan under the National Plan to Reduce Violence Against Women and Their Children. And it certainly builds on previous announcements we've made in this space. But what we've tried to do, I think with considerable success, is bring together elements across prevention and across also rapid response when women do experience domestic violence. So there's $82 million for frontline services, including $10 million for additional domestic violence counselling services around Australia. There's $64 million for 1800 RESPECT. This is our national sexual assault and family and domestic violence counselling service. 1800 737 732, and any woman who's experiencing domestic violence, you should call that number. Counsellors there, and the usage of that service going up very significantly. That $64 million will be sufficient for 575,000 calls or web chat sessions, so very significant investment.
Yeah, well, it is, and it's welcome investment. Obviously, bipartisan support in terms of dealing with this scourge of domestic violence. But when you look at those numbers that Laura mentioned earlier, 8 women every day being hospitalised, it is just so disturbing.
It is very, very troubling. One of the other very troubling statistics is that 1 in 4 women has experienced domestic or sexual violence or sexual violence from an intimate or former intimate partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, date since the age of 15. So very troubling numbers. That's why there's a mix in this package of prevention measures. So there's $25 million for what's called a prevention hub. This will be a focus on building a prevention strategy and better coordination around the country. Of course, this is the Commonwealth's contribution, $328 million to the 4th Action Plan, which will commence from mid-2019. We'll be working with the states and territories on their contributions as well. We've also included $17 million to continue the successful Stop It at the Start advertising campaign, which makes the point about the linkage between lack of respect for women and violence against women. And that campaign is having significant impact. That's why we're providing additional funding for it.
Are you providing additional funding for legal aid as well? This is one of the biggest criticisms in the last 3 years, that funding had been reduced in that area. So will that be restored, or will you fund that even more?
Well, what this package does include from the Attorney General's Department is close to $10 million for better coordination between state and territory services and the family law system, which of course is delivered through the federal court system. So that is going to involve much better coordination between people going through the family court system and state and territory departments, be it Family and Community Services in New South Wales or similar departments around the country. So it is important we have that coordination. There's a whole range of measures across different portfolios.
But the point is, sorry to interrupt you, Minister, Malcolm Turnbull was quoting these same statistics 3 years ago, 8 women a day going to hospital. Nothing has improved in the last 3 years. Is that an admission that you're making today?
What this package recognises is that if we're focused on keeping Australians safe, and that is a clear focus of the Morrison Government, then it's very important we have a specific focus and strategy on keeping women safe. The dangers, the risks of domestic and family violence and of sexual violence are very real. You've quoted the statistics rightly. That's why we're investing at record levels in this package today so that we can continue to make progress, so that women can have options available to them. We've got $78 million for additional places for emergency accommodation, including $18 million for keeping women safe in their home. But at the same time, that $68 million in relation to prevention efforts goes directly to what you're talking about. How do we change the culture? How do we change attitudes? And the research done on the Stop It at the Start campaign suggests that it is having an impact. There's some 70% awareness in the community of that campaign. Of course, that emphasises the linkage between a lack of respect and violence. So by changing attitudes from children up, we can make our society safer for women.
Yeah, that's something that you mentioned, their lack of respect. As Mr Turnbull said when he made that announcement a few years ago, not all disrespect involves violence, but all violence against women starts with disrespect. That's the fundamental lesson, I guess, for parents and others as we bring up the next generation to ensure that this is eradicated.
Look, that's right. We need to understand this connection. There's significant funding here for additional research and data so that we better understand that linkage and better understand how to change attitudes. There's money in there, as Laura mentioned, for education efforts within schools. There's $35 million targeted at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and children. And so across the range, there's significant funding here for women from non-English speaking backgrounds as well. So what this package does is has funding across the whole spectrum designed to change attitudes, improve prevention, $25 million for this prevention hub, but also $82 million for frontline services, $64 million for 1-800-RESPECT, $78 million for emergency accommodation and keeping women safe in their homes. So across the spectrum, significant funding, record Commonwealth funding as we fight this scourge of domestic violence. We want to keep Australians safe. We want to keep Australian women and their children safe.
Well, yeah, indeed. It's a very worthwhile initiative. Wish you all the best with it, Minister. Thanks.
Thank you.